Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Light Gate. We have a great guest tonight. His name is Earl Grey, and we are also excited about that. There's a lot to discuss with him. Oh, I can't wait. We are coming to you live from the beautiful city of New Orleans, Louisiana, at United Public Radio Network at 107.7 FM and the United Paranormal Radio Network at 105.3 FM. We are on Roku. We are on Facebook. We are on YouTube, Rumble, and a whole bunch of others. I want to let our people at Roku know that we know you hear us only, you don't see us, and we will endeavor, if there are pictures or whatever, we're going to give you really good, hard descriptions. Take it away, Preston.
Yeah, UFO Paranormal Network, Dolly.
Oh, sit about. Okay.
I believe that's what it is. Yeah.
Probably
All right. We'll get it right one of these days.
Yeah.
We're still newbies a little bit. Actually, this is our 15th show? I think so.
I think so, yes.
Yeah,
I have to look at the board. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. All right. Yeah. Hi, guys. I'm Preston Dennett. My lovely co-host is Dolly Safran, and I can see a lot of familiar faces here in chat. I just want to give you all a shout out because we love that you come to hear us and our wonderful guests. So I see Chewy here. Hi, Chewy. Always nice to see you. And Michael Kennedy. I hope you're doing awesome. Hi, Susan. So excited about the new book. Hi, girl in the desert. Did you get the water I gave to you? I hope you're not thirsty out there in the desert. Desert's so beautiful. I love the desert. Hi, Dana Matthews. Hope you're doing well. Scuba Maru. Hey, there's you, Dolly, in chat as well. Hi, Dolly.
Hi. Okay.
Sorry, I'm being silly. Joseph Willie. Oh, first time in chat. Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Joseph. That's very cool. Tools, I don't think I mentioned you. Did you catch the daily dose of internet? Yes. Internet is my friend. Hi, Doxy. Always nice to see you.
Hi, Doxy.
Hi, Derek. Really awesome to see you here. Yeah, going on Spaced Out Radio later on Friday, actually.
Friday, yeah.
Yep.
Midnight.
Hi, Janice Connett. Awesome that you could join us today. Gosh, lots of people already in chat. This is so cool. Hello, W. Decker. Very awesome to see you here as well. We do work hard. It's more work than you might think. I mean, it really is. Oh, let's see. Who else do we have here? Hello from Florida. Yeah, it was hot in Florida, I heard.
Hi, Florida. Yeah, my daughter is out there and she's at 98 today. Very, very hot.
Yes. Thank you, Allison. Glad you could join us. Who else do we have here? Real Badger. Awesome to see you here, Real Badger. Very cool. Terry D. Thank you for coming on with us. Who else do we got? Got a nice big crowd. Ruth Kleiber. And I know I've got that pronounced right because you let me know. Thank you, Ruth. I appreciate that. Hope you're doing well. And who else do we got here? Oh, this is Spanish, I think. Desvandando Misterios. Oh, greetings from Brazil. That is awesome. Thanks, Desvandando Misterios, for joining us. That would be Portuguese, wouldn't it?
Correct.
All right. I do know a little bit. I had some of my writing translated to Portuguese without my knowledge, but that's all right. Hi, Izzy Beth. Always nice to see you here. And who else do we got? Nancy Thames. You were here last week. Thames? I think it's Thames. I'm going to go with Thames. Who else do we have? Linus Sutherland. Thank you, Linus. I appreciate you coming on with us. And Guy Merritt. Oh, you know Earl, huh? Awesome.
Very nice.
Dolly and I did actually meet him previously on another panel type show. So we do know a little bit about him. Who else do we have here? Adam Robbins. Oh, thank you, Adam. That's very kind of you. And who else won our wedding? We love you.
Nice.
Too. 1R keeps getting better and better. I hope so. We're trying.
Yes. Working it.
Okay, who else do we got here? UFOstorian Majestic Q clearance. Oh, nice. So that's intriguing. Thanks for joining us, UFOstorian. And I think that's just about it so far. We have Ashley Taylor as well. So thanks, guys. Yeah, I'm super excited. We have a really great guest. I've known him for a while, and he is quite accomplished. Let me just get to his bio here. So I don't want to miss anything because he does have a very interesting bio. Tonight we are welcoming Earl Gray. His full name is actually Earl Gray Anderson, and he is a UFO experiencer, a MUFON field investigator, and actually the MUFON State Director of Southern California and a MUFON STAR team member. So he's part of the emergency response team. If there's a case that's taking place, he gets notified and rushes to it with a team of expert investigators. And trust me when I say that to become a MUFON field investigator, you do have to go through some training and a big test. I took the test. We can certainly talk about that with Earl. But Earl wears many hats. MUFON, by the way, is the world's largest citizen UFO study group. It's got chapters in pretty much every state of the United States and offices all over the world. A lot of really great people in MUFON. And Earl, as I said, wears many hats. He's also a singer, songwriter, and a guitarist, and a retired but still licensed vocational nurse. Dolly.
Wow.
Did you know that?
Oh my God. Yeah.
So Earl has been researching the UFO phenomenon for many years, and get this, has investigated nearly 1,000 cases for MUFON. That's a lot. He is not quite up to 1,000, but I think it's 970 something, if I read correctly. But he's definitely a sought-after speaker and presenter for many podcasts and conventions and even television. He's been on all kinds of podcasts and radio shows, but was on television shows too, including Unidentified with Demi Lovato. I think that was pretty short-lived, unfortunately, but I'm really glad she came out as an experiencer. But also on I Want to Believe, MUFON and UFOs, the proof is out there. And of course, the big one, Ancient Aliens. He's also spoken at AlienCon and many MUFON symposiums, and in fact, hosted the Experiencer Workshop at the 2022 MUFON Symposium in Denver, Colorado. Now, he is one of very few full-time ufologists out there. So that alone is hugely significant. And I love what Earl said here. And I just want to give a short quote, because Earl says that the experiencer phenomena is the beating heart of ufology. 100% agree. This is the core of the whole phenomena. This is where the truth lies. And as Earl says, and I quote, if we wish to understand this phenomenon, we need to listen to those who have had face-to-face encounters. End quote. I love that. I often say that everything we know about UFOs comes from one source. Not governments, not commentators, not scientists who've never had an encounter and frankly don't even do their research. It comes from the people who've had experiences and of course from investigators who talk to them. So I'm super excited about that. Earl lives with his wife and 2 cats in Los Angeles, California. We've got some of his links in the description there, but let's just bring him on because he has quite a story to tell. Let me see. Boom. There we go.
Hi, guys.
Hi,
Sadly,
Earl.
it's only one cat now, but it's my cat Thor. I know our other cat passed away well around this time this year, sadly. But anyway, Thor was making himself known. He whenever I do a podcast or radio or something, he starts crying and meowing. He has to come in here. So he's a good boy, Thor. Good boy, Thor. Anyways,
Well, that's awesome. We had, I think it was Albert Gonzalez.
I'll
his
ruin
cat
my
called-
camera view here if I turn my computer over there. But anyway, thank you so much for having me, you guys. And
welcome.
yeah,
Thank you very much for
it's
coming.
an honor and a pleasure. So
And Thor is welcome to come on too if Thor
Yes.
wants to.
thank you.
And I'm sorry about
You missed one little bit of my title. I know I've got a few, but I'm also a executive committee member of MUFON's Experiencer Resource Team, the ERT.
all right.
And what you said about the experiencer phenomenon being the beating heart of ufology, that's absolutely true. They're not here to do air shows, folks. There's something much more important going on than just showing off cosmic hot rods. So there's contact is what it's all about, and there's interaction going on.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, I love that you said that because that is where we get the truth about UFOs. There's so much speculation, and frankly, as you know, disinformation. So that's, I think, where we need to start looking to the people who are having encounters. So yeah, I'm so glad, and I'm excited to talk to you because I've been a MUFON field investigator. I've worked not nearly as many cases as you. I started going pretty much independent, but I love MUFON. I've spoken at Arizona MUFON, about 4 or 5 of the California MUFONs, and
that's where I first met you. I met you 2015 at the MUFON Symposium. I'd read your Topanga UFO book. I believe at that point I had read a couple, and I was all thrilled to meet Mr. Preston Dennett. I caught your presentation there and everything. So they're fanboy, There you go.
Stop embarrassing me. You're the one who's actually super accomplished as a professional investigator.
How many books have you written now, Preston? I'm still, found out my first
31.
one,
The count is
It's
31.
a brand new one. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Thanks. I can get a shameless shout out. New book, Humanoids and High Strangeness. So
You can do that.
It's our show, so who's to stop?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You have to write a book at one of these points too. Earl.
I'm working on one right now. I've got one probably about 2/3 of the way through, and the main thing is editing together all the pieces in a readable form where it's cohesive, coherent, and hopefully eloquent, and hopefully adds to the literature of ufology as such. I mean, I have high standards. I mean, my guys are Jacques Vallée and Dr. Dr. J. Allen Hynek, and but I mean, it's an ever evolving phenomenon and field, and the best way to find out what's going on is to go hands on. So MUFON,
Right.
I took to it like a fish to water. You can't go to college to learn this stuff. I mean, you can take my college class over at Otis College of Art and Design. I do teach an accredited course in ufology over next to LAX at Otis.
I know. The last
That's
time
cool.
we talked to you and you mentioned that, I forgot to ask you,
Mhm.
can you do that online?
But you won't get a degree that says ufologist, though, unfortunately.
Doesn't matter.
You get a
Yeah.
credit
Not yet.
for my class. Yeah.
That's coming at some point. I think it will, honestly.
I hope so.
Yeah, and that is so cool that you actually have an accredited course, because this should be taught in schools. Because I
It
came
should.
into this,
It's a new day.
I mean, I was absolutely shocked. I mean, it knocked me over finding out this was real, because it never was mentioned in schools, and in the media it was pretty much ridiculed. And the only show I ever saw that ever covered this at all was In Search Of, and Saturday Night Live. they did make some fun.
Yeah.
Or I had to do this. I can't read the comments otherwise. I have two fields of vision. Sorry about that. Excuse me. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
My wife will sometimes kid me. She'll, the Saturday Night Live skit where, well, yeah, they took me and they did this and they did, and we hope we don't sound like that, but probably do to people that aren't in the know,
It is.
Somebody just sent in a question. Yes, I'm state director for Southern California. Our state's so big that we divide it in half. So my cases go from San Diego, the border with Mexico, up to Central California and around Fresno area. My dear friend Ruben Uriarte is state director for Northern California. Ruben's a great guy, and we're dear friends. So we work together, and you have to stay in touch sometimes, because sometimes you'll have a flap or something's going on where, it's not like our visitors recognize borders of any sort.
Yeah, Ruben Uriarte was a prior guest, and so was his cat.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
Cool.
Yeah, I love Ruben.
Great guy.
Susan says, great book. Each experience. Her experience is chapter 19. Thank you, Susan. Your story is so awesome. It deserves to be well known. So sorry, I had to jump that in there. So yeah, I know, Earl, you've had a lot of experiences investigating, but I'm always curious about how someone gets involved in this field, and have they had their own experiences? And having talked to you, I know you've had some, but I'm wondering, how early did it begin, and what brought you into this field?
Wow, you are opening up Pandora's box. It's a good thing this is a 2-hour show. Well, okay, the way it kind of started for me, I always seemed to have this propensity and love for outer space. The first thing I remember, is being like a little, under 5 years old, drawing control panels for a spaceship and scotch taping them to my bedroom wall, and it's like, we're going to go to Jupiter now, And I remember climbing up the swing set that my dad built. You'd build things back there, and he built this beautiful wooden swing set that had monkey bars. So I climbed up to the top of this thing, and I was up there singing and waving at the sky, and my mom was looking through the kitchen window. This was in Venice, California. Yes, I am a native of Southern California. But I remember this really well, actually. I was up there singing and waving, and I remember who I was singing and waving to. But it's like, who are you singing and waving to, Earl? And I just said, the space people, Mom. I'm singing and waving to the space people. And here it's, 60 years after, I'm kind of doing the same thing,
How old were you at that point?
It's about 4.5 or so. So, around 4, maybe. It's an early memory, but I have a good memory.
Why are you waving to the space people at age 4?
I honestly don't know. I think I wanted to know them. I think I wanted to know them. Now, my mom had an interesting history, and it wasn't who my mom worked for was no mystery. All right. The family knew about this. It'd be talked about and stuff, that she was actually one of Howard Hughes's secretaries. He had a couple of secretaries here, over by Otis College. It's kind of ironic that I teach a class there, because it's Howard Hughes Parkway right there. And the old Hughes Aircraft facility was on that road. But we all knew that. And when I was born, my mom tried to become a housewife, which later on she got bored, and she wound up being a headhunter for aerospace companies. And she was getting rocket scientists down to broom pushers for some places, like the Rockwell Science Center here in Newbury Park, Thousand Oaks area. She literally got the people pushing brooms to the astrophysicists, to the rocket scientists over there. Amazing. But when I was 5 years old, my mom, it was breakfast in our cheery little yellow painted kitchen in Venice, California. I remember it was just like a normal day. I think I was having cereal or something. And my mom sat down, And she started talking to me in a weird way. She was talking to me as though I were another adult. And it got my attention. I mean, she wasn't speaking in like a parental voice or anything. It was very strange. And she told me a story. She said, well, son, you know that I worked for Howard Hughes. But what people don't know is that I used to work for him in a very strange place. And she talked about how they sent her out to the middle of nowhere with a little security detail. And she said it was the Great American Desert. And she never expounded upon that. She didn't tell me whether, I've thought maybe Area 51. I've spoken to Richard Sauder about it, and Hughes did have a facility back in the 1950s at Area 51, which I find interesting.
Richard Sauder is the guy who wrote that book, Underground Bases.
Yes, right? Underground Bases. And we're gonna go there. It might have been New Mexico White Sands, I think. Just in my own research and stories I've heard from other people, the children of people that had worked there told a very similar story to what my mom told me. But wow. She said that they didn't tell her where she was going. They took her out to the middle of nowhere, and she said there was this concrete shack. It was very low slung to the ground, and she was wondering why they took her all that way to go and look at tools or a tractor. She didn't know what could possibly be interesting in there. But they unlocked everything and they took her in there, and there was an elevator. She actually said it was an Otis elevator, like you'd see in a skyscraper. But this thing only went one direction. It went down. I guess it went up too, but there weren't floors above the ground floor. So she got in this thing, and she said that she thought that maybe it would go down maybe a floor or two or three. It kept on going. And I guess it had some speed to it. And she used the word, I felt butterflies in my stomach. And I felt scared because it just kept on dropping down. She said that the doors opened up and there was a little city under the desert. It was her very words. She said it was a little city under the desert. Now, mind you, this is 1955. That's before I was born. I'm 65 years old. All right. I'm aging myself. I'm proud of it. Okay.
On same age. Yep.
There you go. Yeah. Good music that we grew up.
58. That's right.
Yeah. 1958. So, but anyway, she said that they got around in little golf carts, that there were lots of German rocket scientists that worked down there. She mentioned that they had little cafes, and they tried to make people feel at home. Apparently they stayed there long periods of time. She said that she had they had a barber shop, but she said that the barber could actually perm her hair and do her hair for her. Now, she never mentioned how long she was working down there. Figure, well, if she had to have her hair done, it must have been, longer than a day or two. She said that they had one little cafe that had yellow umbrellas over the tables, like a French cafe. And then she laughed and she said, you don't need an umbrella in the cave, but it had umbrellas. And so I'm like, a 5-year-old, and I don't think that I was going. I think it might have been during the summer, because I don't remember being in a hurry to go to school or anything. I'd started kindergarten that year. But she talked about how she worked with, she knew Werner von Braun, she said. I don't think they mentioned him in the conversation, but he would come on, The Wonderful World of Color, the Disney show. His color TVs were the new big thing. And so it was in color, and that was the name of the first, Disney show. And she, Werner von Braun would come on, and my mom would say, that's my friend Werner. And she once talked about him a little bit. And she said, well, he used to call me Betty Grace. That was my mom's first and middle name put together. Almost like a pet name, I guess. And so but she said, he's a charming man. Now, I got older, and later on, I said, Mom, I don't know how charming he was. He was a Nazi, wasn't he? And Mom she almost got kind of mad. She said he was not really a Nazi. They forced him to work for Hitler, but he just wanted to go to the moon. In fact, she said, she quoted him once. She said that Werner said that we built the rockets right in Germany, but we sent them to the wrong planet. In other words, the V2s went crashing down on Liverpool and such. So that was, after my mom talked underground base, then she kind of, at the very end of it, she said, "Oh, by the way, UFOs and extraterrestrial life are a real thing. We already know. We've already met them." And so that's where my interest began as a kid. I figure maybe it's because my mom would see the way I was, because I would sort of get like the Time Life books, and I would go straight to the satellite launches and the early Gemini missions and stuff, put them around myself, and that's where I would play. It was my safe little nook. And I think that she recognized from an early age that there was something different about me, that I had this great love for outer space. So moving on to, that was the only time she talked about that. She would mention Werner if she saw him on TV, but it was sort of like that was all she wrote for a long, long time.
Well, did you ever figure out like why she do you think she was unloading? Like, just, I need someone to talk to about
yes.
this.
She
Did she
okay.
expect you to remember? Did she expect you to remember? I mean, you were 5 years old.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Well, okay. In fourth grade, I was
Mhm.
10 years old, and we used to do show and tell and stuff. And I remember I went up and I talked about my father's landscaping business, and the other kids were kind of yawning and not very interested. So then I decided to talk about my mom and what she used to do. And I told my mom's story in front of my fourth grade class.
Wow.
And by the way, UFOs are real, and we already know there's alien life in the universe. So suddenly the UFO books disappeared from the school library, right? They banned books.
Can I tell you something? You're going to die when I tell you this. My father worked for NASA. I went to NASA all the time growing up. When I was in the fourth grade, I opened my mouth in school one day. It's the first time I ever did it in front of my teacher. Her name was Mrs. Stone. And I told her about NASA. And I even said, we should go to NASA and see astronauts and talk about the moon and what's on the moon besides astronauts. And she jerked. And I went home and told my father about it. And my dad was, oh my God. And they had to find a way to shut me up. So the next thing I know, we're all on a bus, my whole class, going to NASA to see NASA, to meet astronauts. And my dad told me after that, shh, never again. And I was like, okay. I didn't know what I was doing. God. Yeah.
I didn't get anything like that.
Yeah.
What happened was the other kids started making fun of me, and they would put the little, my Martian antennae behind my head, and go, ooh, Earl, the alien and UFOs, and it became a problem. I was already kind of a weird kid to begin with, but that just like ramped the whole teasing business up.
Yeah. And
so my teacher, she scheduled a parent-teacher conference with my mom, and it wasn't parent-teacher conference time. So, I was wondering what's going on. But I went and played in the little playground, and it was Acacia School in Thousand Oaks, California, where this whole thing took place. And so I remember my mom was really quiet, and she went to the play and retrieved me from the swing sets and all that. And we're driving home, and it wasn't that far. We're like, a mile drive or something, but she's very, very quiet. And then she looks at me and she goes, son, I'm not angry at you because you didn't know that it was wrong, but you can't ever, ever, ever talk about what I use, the little city under the desert, or UFOs or space people ever again, because I wasn't supposed to tell you what I told you. It's top secret. And she goes back to driving, and I'm kind of, I remember feeling like kind of sweaty, or, it was, I didn't know that I did something wrong. and said, "My God, how did you remember that? You were just a baby. You were just a baby." And she said, "Son, you can't talk about it. If you talk about that again, your mom could go to prison. Your mom is, I signed things where, and I never would have told you, but I didn't think that you would remember because you were in kindergarten." I remembered,
That's a good lesson for
Yeah.
contactees.
So the rest of my life was me. Mhm.
Contactees, I've heard this many times, remember stuff all the way back.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I remember this. I wasn't a contactee until I joined MUFON. I mean, that was way later on. I think that they were always around. Okay. I think that probably they, I was constantly trying to get my mom to talk more as I got older.
Yeah.
When I was late in my teens, I had like kind of a Christian rebirth, and I was actually planning on becoming a minister. And then I didn't want to hear about it. Okay. Because I didn't really have room for aliens in my pantheon. But now I found something out from Richard Sauter. He said that a lot of the people that worked in the early DUMS, which is a deep underground military base, a lot of those people wound up with recurring cancers. Now, I'm not sure if this is because they built them near the Trinity site and where they were doing all the nuclear testing, or perhaps they were using, a nuclear pile to make the place run. I mean, I'm sure it was off the grid. It's, you don't run a city off of the usual electric company that you got, But it was around 1977, and my mom had a cancer scare again. She had already had a total hysterectomy shortly after I was born, 1958. She stopped working for Hughes when I was born. And she was actually working in the military DUM while she was pregnant with me. I mean, she at one point said, "Well, you were down there too. You were in my tummy,"
Wow.
So, but 1977, she had a clear cancer screening, and I was sort of there as her support. I was 19 years old, and I told my mom, let's go see this new movie. This new movie just came out. It had come out 2 days before, this thing called Star Wars. Time magazine did an article on it. So we went and saw the film. I think that we might have been the only people in the theater. It was before the lines were wrapped around. I mean, nobody knew about it yet.
Oh, wow.
And the curtains closed. Santa Monica, California, where my mom had her work, her strange job that she had, and apparently learned all this stuff. And she started talking. And for me at that point, it was an inconvenient, because I didn't really have room for ETs in my pantheon. It was Jesus and angels and the devil and demons. And she's talking about, she went into detail. She said, "Well, son, that film, Star Wars, is not far-fetched." She said, "It's really like that out there." She said that the different spacecraft and the different beings, she said that it's really truly like that, but they're never going to tell the public. And I remember I was almost like, la 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 la, I don't want to hear this. It was, I really didn't want to hear it. I actually, if I ever get hypnotically regressed, I'm not going to go back to my face-to-face, because I remember that. But I may go back to 1977 to retrieve that whole conversation, because I know she told me more than what I remember. But she said, I asked her, why won't they tell people? And she said they're afraid of how the public will react. She mentioned the War of the Worlds radio broadcast, and that people were barricading themselves and jumping out of windows and draining their bank accounts. And she said that they're just afraid that it will just cause chaos out there, and it's never going to happen. She said they will never, ever, ever tell the public. But she said it's
That's what
real.
they told everybody back then who was working underground like that. That was their number one pat answer. It was to cover what was really going on, just so you know. That is not true. They knew we wouldn't react that way, but they put that out there because they were causing fear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always wondered when people bring up the War of the Worlds, because that was designed to scare people. I mean, that
Oh
was
yeah.
true.
Yeah.
And it did.
Well, now
It
we're
was
hearing from David Grush and all this that apparently, we've known that they've been here at least since 1930. So there you go. But this was kind of news to me, other than, what I had initially heard from my mom when I was 5. And I'll tell you the truth. I mean, it confused me. All right, because I had become an amateur astronomer. I loved Carl Sagan, and I was reading all the the astronomy books and was into the Voyager spacecraft and all
So
that.
did you believe in UFOs at this point? Or
No. I decided Arthur Clarke and Isaac Asimov said that it was a bunch of bunk, and so I didn't understand why my mom had said that when I was little. Now, one of my dearest friends, ironically now, is Paul Hynek. He's a very, very close friend of mine, and he has the correspondence between his father and Arthur C. Clarke. And I found out that Arthur Clarke, in his correspondence with J. Allen Hynek, he said, "Joseph, I really, really respect your work, and I think there's absolutely something to it. But I can't ever say that in public because I get invited to another moonshot."
Yeah. Neither could Carl Sagan. He was shut up. He said, "Don't talk." Absolutely, and he didn't. Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Well,
His first the first paper he ever wrote in 1962 was essentially ancient aliens theory. He said that instead of looking for radio signals like our friend Seth Shostak says, that you should dig deep, and you're eventually going to find something that doesn't belong there. And apparently
Arthur C. Clarke, one of his award-winning stories was The Sentinel, which was, I think, about an alien artifact on the moon. But there's one just like that on Phobos, I think.
I've seen that.
Phobos, yes, absolutely.
Weird.
Which makes me wonder.
Yeah. Well, why do you think 2010 happened? 2010 Space Odyssey.
He knew something.
Yeah.
I'm sure he did.
I think he knew something too. Now Robert Heinlein, he was a little more open about it, and he actually said that he thought that UFOs were a real thing. He's one of the few guys. I mean, but yes, he did. Asimov, of course. Asimov poo-pooed the whole thing.
I just found out Clifford Simak, who was really my favorite writer as a young man. He wrote several UFO articles. I had no idea. I just found them online. I'm like, oh my God, Clifford Simak.
I love Clifford Simak. He was the editor of the Milwaukee Star when he was a wonderful writer, and I think I've read everything that man ever published.
Yeah, I love his stuff.
Well, I've always loved outer space, and when my mom, I got past my boxed in ID theology and all that, and I think that a part of it maybe was when I read In My Father's House there's many rooms, and C.S. Lewis talked about how the light year is God's quarantine to keep the rest of the universe safe from us, and he might not be that wrong. I mean, you look at the way we war amongst ourselves and at how barbaric we still are.
We aren't the only place that does that. There are a few planets out there that at the same evolution we are. Don't doubt it.
Well, I'm sure this isn't their first rodeo. I'm positive.
I like that statement, the quarantine, because it does seem like once you reach that level of technology to actually traverse interstellar distances, you will have hopefully reached a level of spiritual and ethical and moral maturity.
Responsibility.
Yeah. Well, we're on the cusp of that. We're on the cusp of that, with Elon Musk talking about going, take over Mars. I have an interesting friend who I can't say that much about, who said, Earl, Mars is not for colonizing. It's for you guys to learn from. You don't want to repeat what happened there.
Right. And, it's a dead planet anyway. There's no way it's going to happen. He wants to send nukes to the poles there. to blow them up so that the water,
Can you imagine?
evaporates into an atmosphere, but it'll never happen because it's outgassing. Its core is dead. It has no magnetosphere. Anything they do will go back out into space and cause more problems for us because it'll disrupt the magnetism from that planet that we do are affecting one another and mess with us really bad. So everything that he says, in my opinion, with knowledge, is asinine. Okay, I'm sorry. It is.
Yeah, no, I agree. I started out as a kind of a fan of Elon Musk, and I if you'd asked me 5 years ago if I would go to to Mars with Elon Musk's group, I would have said, yeah, sign me up. And now I'm no,
Yeah.
not so much. Yeah, not so much. I mean, I want to stay here and try to save our world, and I hope that we can. And that's what I guess that if I have any core purpose in this life, maybe that's it. Because if we create ripples, those can become waves, and there's such negativity and such desperation right now, and everybody's at each other's throats. Everybody's demonizing each other. Political parties, it's like you hear this talk about
Anarchy.
civil war, and
Yeah.
it's just
We
gone
slid
to
into
hell,
anarchy. Thesis and antithesis. We are now an antithesis, big time.
Yeah.
Very big time. Yes.
It's very disturbing, but I believe that nothing is ever set in stone, and I think that we can change things if we put our heart in that, and if we go out there and create the ripples that can become waves, and hopefully by doing that, I mean, that's what keeps me going every single day.
Well, that's
I
what
mean,
we're
it's
doing
not
right
just
here.
yeah, it's not just I'm not in this thing for the cosmic hot rods, and I love hot rods. Ironically, I've had a couple of UFO sightings, and they felt like teachable moments. It was after I'd had my own face-to-face experience, which was very scary in the moment. Ontological shock plus, it was.
How old were you
You
then?
could talk about this thing, but when you experience it, it pulls the rug out from under you, and there's PTSD involved, and you have to throw away your former views of stuff.
Yeah. How old were you when that happened?
It happened recently. It happened like 8 years ago. I had just
Okay.
become a field investigator.
Right.
My mom, I kept trying to get more information from her, and sometimes I'd get a little bit more, but she was working in aerospace. She wanted to keep her security clearances, and she did.
Mhm.
I mean, I've been told by, a couple people from the DOD since, I've read your mom's file. She did not lie to you, and you can be very, very proud of your mom. She was a patriotic woman, and she loved you very much. One person said she didn't talk much about your dad, but she talked about you, and we knew about you
Yes.
because your mom, I had one guy say your mom reported on herself after you talked in front of your school. You gave like a report or something, didn't you? It's like, oh my God.
Wow.
But
They don't
I
miss
guess
a
she was
thing,
afraid it
do
would
they? Yeah.
get back to him,
Yeah. Are you comfortable talking about that encounter?
Yeah, well, yeah, sure.
Okay,
I
would love
do
to
it
hear
all the
about it.
time.
The nuts and bolts of it. Go. I want to hear.
Well, when it happened, I wasn't expecting it to happen, and I had a lot of presuppositions about what it would be, and I started doing like the meditation thing and sending out like the message, I want to meet you.
Mhm.
I'm thinking Valiant Thor, or I'm thinking
Oh,
the
no.
tall whites, the benevolent ones, and I'm thinking, take me, show me the universe, but bring me home, in time for breakfast.
And
Or
when was this? I mean, when you started to turn around?
this was I'd been a MUFON field investigator for maybe 4 or 5 months. I was kind of feeling my oats about it.
Great.
I had not gotten unknown yet, though. It was a bunch of IFOs and a few I thought probable UFOs.
Okay.
My state director was kind of strict and in a good way too. I mean, he wanted to have you had to have your ducks in line to call something an actual UFO. And that it was good. I mean, I have high standards too. I want my field investigators to, if they have a case that is an unknown, I want them to prove it as close to impeccably as possible. I've said this many times. I challenge anybody to take any single one of my cases that I've closed as an unknown and prove that it's not. I'm very, very punctilious and careful and detail oriented about my cases. I think I've got maybe 80, 90 cases now, maybe closer to 100. If we include my ERT cases, I definitely have, many
So
more.
you call yourself an objective observer researcher, correct?
Yeah. I mean, I certainly have my views. I have my views and my passions, but I also have kind of strict standards that I try to hold myself up to.
Okay.
Well, I do want to hear about your encounter, but I'm curious what inspired you to become a UFO researcher? What pulled you into MUFON?
My mom died. When my mom died in 1999, again on her deathbed, I mean, I was angry because she was dying of cancer. It was like the 6th time she had it, and she got breast cancer again, and she didn't have breasts anymore. She had bilateral, mastectomies.
Mastectomies, yeah.
Yes, but it came back and went into her lungs and metastasized. So she was gone maybe a week later, but I told her, I said, we should go get lawyers and we should go after the government because they obviously didn't protect you, and my mom's big deal. Her money used to go to, every single year she would go to England and she would flat for 3 months, and her summers would all be spent in England. And I think that she considered, other than, after paying for, house mortgage and things like that, that was her mad money. And I told her that, trips to England aren't worth your life. She was only 73 years old. She was a relatively young woman. She was a young woman. I mean, I'm 65. Do the math. And my mom said, Earl, I'm proud of what I did. I would do it again. I knew the risks involved, and I would do it all over. It was worth it, and I did it because I love my country. And a week later, she was gone. Oh. And as long as she was alive, there was always that chance that I might get the golden ticket, that she might just blah, this is what they are like. This is who they are. This is where they're from. This is why they're here. I didn't get any of that. Yeah, I mean, she never gave me any. She didn't say they're little gray aliens. I tried to trick her. I even brought up Bob Lazar. I mean, I wasn't real UFO savvy, but I like everybody else, I'd heard the Bob Lazar, the George Knapp stuff that came out, and I asked her. I said, this Bob Lazar guy sounds like somebody that you would have sent out to one of your clients, Mom. Because I mean, she was sending people out to the Atomic Commission and to Rockwell and Lockheed, and I mean, she would yuck it up with Ben Rich on the phone, for God's sake. Everything written in shorthand, so you couldn't read a darn thing, And so I said, his name's Bob Lazar. Did you ever hear that guy? And she looked uncomfortable for a second, and then she looks up and she says, Bob Laser, that's not a real name. And she puts her glasses back up on her top of her nose, and she's back into doing what she was doing. So anyway, but it was all over in 1999. I started reading some literature. I mean, I had read some Hynek, and I'd read, I think I had read some of the contactee stuff, the stuff that from Giant Rock here in Joshua Tree. And I was just, I read whatever books were there in the school library that then disappeared, when I gave my lecture. But don't ban books, you guys. Anyway, but when she passed away, I realized, I mean, I had to figure it out for myself, and it bothered me. I kept remembering what she said, that it's realer than you'll ever know. And, I mean, I read Corso's book where, I guess Barry Goldwater went and wanted to see the Blue Room at Wright-Patterson, and they told him, curiosity is not need to know, never ask me that again. but I felt like I had the need to know, and nobody's going to tell me what it was, what the answer was. So after going through the literature, I finally decided I need to do this hands-on somehow. About that time, Hainer One TV show started playing on TV. I had read, MUFON kept coming up, and book after book after book. And it seemed like it was a scientific organization. I mean, their creed was the scientific study of UFOs for the benefit of humanity, which sounded like my personal creed. Really, that's what I wanted to do. It's like, wow, talk about, square peg in a square hole. That's me, So I looked up my then California state director, who is Jeff Krause, my dear mentor and friend. And he kind of got me up to speed on the nuts and bolts stuff, and that's what I was doing, and that's how I became a UFO investigator. And contact completely threw me and changed me. I mean, I'm still a very good, UFO straight ahead investigator, but I know that it has this whole other aspect to it. It's a little bit more like the Jacques Vallée type, John Keel, high strangeness stuff. It's a personal phenomenon.
Very personal. Okay, I'm dying to hear about your encounter. Really.
Sure. Well, you guys take a break halfway, all right? Are we there yet? Because I don't want to. I don't want to stop talking.
We're not there yet.
It's not. No, you don't. Okay. You don't leave and come back. It's just station identification. Okay. So go ahead.
Oh, okay. I got you. All right. So when I was putting this telepathic message out there, and it was just a romp. I didn't think it was going to work, to tell you the truth. I really truly didn't think it was going to work, but it's worth a try. And so I just sent that out there. I want to meet you, and you can abduct me if you want. I actually sent that message out there. You can take my DNA. That's fine. I don't mind, but I just want to see you. I want to meet you. Eyes on and personal. And I did that for maybe 2 weeks. My wife and I were living in Burbank at the time. Chandler Bike Path, old house in Burbank. Crickets in the rafters.
I know where that is. There's a bookstore right near there that I attended many times.
Oh, the Odyssey was one. Yeah, I know that place. So anyhow, I went upstairs. It was a little after midnight, and I think I'd closed a case that was like a Myloon or something. And it wasn't much. I'd had a hip surgery recently, so I'd put a bunch of pillows behind my back because it was more comfortable if I was semi-recumbent, almost sort of like lounge chair up, So I was lying there. My wife was already asleep, and a weird thing started happening. Our room started flooding with light with no source. It wasn't coming from the window. It wasn't coming from any source. It was as though the air had become lit, and it had blue to it, or it made me feel like it was blue. I don't know. I mean, you hear about the blue color of light that experiencers see, but for me, it was more of like this peaceful. It was almost like the feeling of blue, of the ocean and a perfect sky. It was sort of,
Yeah.
You couldn't hear the cricket concerto. Crickets were silent, which didn't happen. We had a problem with crickets. It was an old house. It's a noisy area of town. It's certainly not it's not the countryside. It's an urban area, suburbia anyhow. But you couldn't hear external noise. And this didn't bother me. None of it was bothering me. And looking back at it, it's like I'm so scientifically minded. I mean, as a nurse and amateur astronomer and everything else. And but for some reason, I wasn't really questioning it. I felt calm and peaceful, and the light became brighter. and I started realizing that I couldn't move my body. And there was this area in front of the bed where our TV was. And this is impossible, but it happened. There was this swirling motion in the air. It was sort of a sepia color, sort of a yellowish, kind of rust and yellow mixed together, and it was spinning around like a little
Energy beam
galaxy.
coming down,
You're familiar with this, okay?
Yes, many
So,
times.
all right.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
I know one other guy in New York that had this happen. So I'm calm for some reason, and the thing opens from the center out. It was
Right.
as though somebody had poured cream into a cup of black coffee,
Right.
where it just.
You become opaque. Yeah.
And I just saw distance. It wasn't like you could see the inside of a spaceship or anything like that. It was just blank. It was just bright light coming forward.
Wow.
And these four little figures that were being drawn towards me. They didn't walk up. It was though they were just floating a millimeter off the ground. And they pulled up to where the bed was. And they were the guys that you saw in Whitley Strieber's communion book, but the gray skin and larger forehead than that, just like 4 foot tall, maybe a little smaller than that.
Yep.
At this point, I was scared. But I was still, they put you into like a hypnagogic state, I think is the word. It's almost like a dream state, but you're not asleep. And I could feel their hands on me. I could feel their skin texture. It was kind of a cold.
Totally
it was certainly not warm. They're cold blooded. And I'm trying to communicate with them with my mind. I mean, I'd read enough literature at that point. I'd read Bud Hopkins. I was trying, usually, and there was a tall being that was standing in the periphery of this portal, for lack of better terminology. I mean, I think they really did open some kind of a wormhole or a portal.
You were in a dimensional rift.
Mm-hmm.
They put you in
they encapsulate
you. Third dimension into the fourth dimension. You're outside yourself. Okay. Go ahead.
I think this is why, like the Tic Tacs go in Mach 18 and didn't cause a single sonic boom. And they said that it had this shimmer around it. And I think it's the same thing. That's kind of what it looked like. It was this shimmery light thing that was going on.
When you come out of the third dimension and you're halfway between the third and the fourth, everything becomes opaque. Because you're not seeing in the third, solidly in the third, you're halfway into the fourth, and everything goes opaque. You can see objects, you know where you're at, you can see you can see people and things, but you're still opaque because you're now shifted out of your own time frame.
So this would explain why cars can disappear from roads, right?
Yeah.
You see that all the time.
I know. Well, I mean, they're in control.
Right.
You're highly suggestible when you're under their influence. And speaking of being under the influence, I know I was not under the influence of anything, you guys. I know. I maybe had a beer with dinner, and that was, like 5-6 hours.
So
earlier.
were you alone, or was your wife?
No, my wife was there. But when this was going on, it was all I could see the entities, and I believe that she was still there. I don't think that they took me somewhere. Like their ship or something like that, because I could still see the opening and I could see this tall being standing there almost like a guard. And then I was cogent enough where I remembered how some people, the little guys are usually not talkative, but usually there's a tall guy there that will communicate with you. Right. But he was not communicating with me. And they were taking blood from me. They had put these 4 tubes that almost looked like a fire hose, except what they remind me of is almost like the oxygen tubes that the Apollo astronauts used to have. They were like a couple inches around,
right?
And I felt very weak, like they were taking blood and energy from me, and I started scared because I wasn't a calming message. I knew enough about this thing that usually people are told, don't worry, we're not going to harm you. We're going to leave you, fine. And I wasn't getting that. So I think that I got so horrified because I started thinking, well, maybe I'm going to wind up like one of those mutilated cows. I mean, these guys really don't care. They're not,
Did you ask them
communicating
questions
with-
while they were there?
They were not they were not answering me anything.
Not
And
at
yeah,
all.
I did. I was asking who they were, where they were from, and why they were, but there was nothing coming back. I believe that my experience and the time thing is so hard to say how long it was, because it seemed almost timeless.
It is.
But best of my ability, I mean, when it was all over, it was only maybe 1:30, 2 in the morning. So it must like 20 minutes, 30 minutes max. It was a long thing. And as far as I know, they didn't take me to a ship or anything. It was a house call. And there's no room to park a spaceship between our old house and our neighbor's house. By the way. There's like 10 feet there. So it had to have been an interdimensional portal or wormhole of some kind.
They don't use portals and they don't use wormholes. There is no such thing as a wormhole. And I'll explain to you if you understand physics at all or astronomy.
I've heard differently, but I don't know. I'm open. I honest to God, I don't have any dogma about this stuff. I have my favorite ideas, and I've had things that I've been told
They
by
use light
interesting people.
technology, and they are billions of years in advance of us, and they know how to open what they call light gateways. And they can travel interdimensionally that way. And they did a dimensional rift and came into the room with you, and then they evacuated the rift. And you were
Well, I
left.
know it was an interdimensional thing. I mean, it wasn't it wasn't the way that our physics works.
Exactly. Right. It's a
Now, when they left,
No,
it was the same way that they came in. I mean, they apparently got what they wanted.
Yeah.
And they went backwards, but they kept staring at me. And they're archivizing. You look in their eyes, and it's like staring into the abyss. And you can't look away. You can't pull your gaze away from them.
Right.
So they pulled away, and the tubes pulled away almost like I think of a fire engine where you see the yeah, I mean, but I didn't see what they were going to, or what, I couldn't see a machine they were attached to or anything. It was just all brightness,
Right.
So any way they were gone again, you could see them like the distance. It was very abstract. It was almost like looking at a Salvador Dali painting or something, the way it looked.
Yeah.
And the wall started spinning again, the opposite direction, though. It was going that way this time.
Yeah.
And it closed up, and it was still lit in our room. I could start moving. And when I could finally move, I started screaming and yelling at my wife. My wife was not happy. She said, "Oh my God, you've joined this crazy UFO group. And is this the kind of crazy, is this a thing that I have to look forward to in the future?" And she didn't believe me.
Hold on for just a second, because we do need to take our station break.
That's a good place to pause.
Yes.
So yeah, I just want to let everyone know that you are watching The Light Gate. I'm Preston Dennett, and my lovely co-host is Dolly Safran. Our guest tonight is Earl Gray, State Section Director for the Mutual UFO Network. And we are streaming on several platforms, including United Public Radio Network 107.7 from the beautiful city of New Orleans. Also the UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 105.3, Roku, Facebook, YouTube. And that's what we wanted to let you know. So thank you for joining us, and didn't mean to interrupt you.
Okay, I have two very important questions to ask
I
you.
have questions too, but go ahead.
Did you have any marks on your arms? Were they?
I did not have a single mark anywhere. Okay, there was no mark. And I've asked somebody about that, who's an interesting person, again, that I can't say much about. And I was told, well, there are other ways to take blood in the universe than needles. This is very kind of a barbaric practice that you guys are still
Actually,
doing.
I can tell you what was happening to you. I've witnessed this. You were being given an implant, and they were deciding where to put it. And I swear to you, if you go have an X-ray, soft tissue X-ray, you probably find one in one of your arms. So you were being marked. They were marking you. Yep.
Well, here's the thing. So my wife thought that I had I don't know what. She was
Yeah.
not happy, and I felt embarrassed, and I didn't know who to talk to.
Did
I
she
told
see
the state.
anything?
She didn't remember anything. She didn't see anything. I mean, it was still light in our room, but she was so angry. I don't even think she noticed. And
Wow.
but 2 nights later, the shoe was on the other foot. I was being shaken, and
Wow.
our room was flooded with light the second time.
Yeah.
And it's the only time I've ever seen my wife do this. But she was pacing next to the bed. She's going, "My God, Earl, you need to tell your little friends that they need to leave us the," I'm not going to use the word, family show. You need to tell them that they need to leave us the alone. I didn't sign up for this. Yeah. And she was mad. I mean, and maybe she's the reason for being mad. She was acting like I had drawn them to us, and maybe that, had
You had,
any
you asked for it.
veracity to that.
Yeah.
As
Yeah,
we
you
shall
wanted
receive.
it. That's right.
2 nights after that, okay, thank God though. Now, at least my wife knows that I didn't have a mental break.
True.
Thank
Yeah.
God for that. Okay,
Yeah.
because I don't know what I would. I don't know what I would do. I mean, I don't think I'd be talking with you guys if she thought that. I love my wife. I don't want her to leave me. It's a weird story. And she sure didn't want to hear it after the first night. Now there is 5 nights after my initial experience, and again, our house was filled with light with no source, but then it was also coming through the window.
Yep.
And Lisa and I we kind of ran to the window. We had the Venetian, these guys, right?
Yeah.
And so we pulled them up, and you couldn't see where the light was coming from, but it was perfectly silent. And neighbors' porch lights were coming on, right? And it was like God's own spotlight over our house. And you could see the shadows behind every single leaf. It was just intense. It was like a laser bright light. And we're looking at this. We're looking at each other. I'm not going to go and see where, I knew about Travis Walton. I wasn't going to repeat that, but my wife and I had a telepathic moment at the same time. We were given not a screen memory, but it's like a screen excuse for what was going on. We both heard in our head at the same time, "Don't worry, it's just the neighbor's porch light."
Oh, wow.
And Lisa and I look at each other, and we're standing there, one side of the window, I'm on the other side. And we both laugh. We're both, LOL, right? At the same time. And Lisa said, "That's no porch light."
Yeah. Pay no
So I
attention.
do, we had a telepathic moment. Now, I'll
Wow.
tell you, the heck of this thing is that my wife to this date, all she remembers from all 3 nights, except for when she, I was screaming and yelling, all she remembers is our room flooding with light. She does not remember beings. She doesn't remember a hole in the wall. She doesn't remember the light even in our backyard. I've sometimes thought, well, maybe I should go and ask some of our old neighbors if they remember something weird happening. But I kind of my guess is that they're probably not going to. I mean, if they erased my wife's memory of this. But thank God, I mean, she knows that you need a source for light. So she knows that I'm not making stuff up. But I kept this to myself for a long time.
Before you go on about that, I'm curious.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like this was a good thing? Are you glad that this happened?
I am now. Yeah. In fact, shortly, it took a while. All right. After it first happened, it threw me. It threw me. I mean, this isn't what I ordered, I want to meet Val Thor.
Yes, you did.
Star Trek.
Yes, you did. Yeah.
But well, I know
that.
maybe in another life I'd come to agreements.
You were
I
wanting
don't
to
know.
show up. They did. You got it, Toyota.
Oh, I asked for it.
You know?
Yeah, I did ask for it. I
I know of other cases like that. Yep, that's how it can begin.
And I think that I think I was marked from birth anyway. I don't know if, I don't
I had
think
a
it
feeling you were.
necessarily
You have a lot of
happened.
contactee markers on you. Okay.
Yeah.
Right? The
And-
interest
Well,
in
yeah,
the
I know.
Yeah.
I know at this point.
These people.
Then I
at
didn't
Age
know.
4.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I told my state director, and that was the first person other than Lisa that I talked to, and he was like rolling to the eyes, and he did not want to hear this. I was his new field investigator, and he was hoping to promote me, and he did that.
Wow.
I thought he was going to fire me, quite honestly.
Because
And I
you
went to
haven't
Peter
counted.
Robbins,
Wow.
and Peter
It's
Robbins
amazing
was,
to me because it's been my observation since I came out, and I've been watching y'all, and I do
Mhm.
that a lot of field investigators decide to be field investigators, ask for a moment with ET or ask to be contacted, and they are. And it's more of you than not. Almost every investigator that I've seen, talked to, or heard of
Yep.
have all had contact.
I did it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I asked for it and I got it.
Kathleen Martin is who was the most helpful person in the universe to me. I'd sent
awesome.
other experiencer cases to Kathy, and I'd met her at I think I met her at the same symposium I met you at the first time, Preston. But at this point, she knew about me, and she knew me via emails. I would send her ERT cases. If I had a contact case or I had an abduction case, I wasn't a member of the ERT yet. I would send them to Kathy. And we got talking, and I told her, I said, I had an experience and I'm still confused about it. And could we talk? And we scheduled a lunch. She was out here for, I think it was Alien Con, the first one. And we got together, we sat down for lunch, and I told her about everything. And she had some answers for me. And strangely, I didn't hate my entities. I felt like it sort of initiated something in me. And later on, I'd read things like Kenneth Ring's book, and the Omega book, and things like that. And I found out about the Valet Davis effect, which I consider myself a Valet Davis effect. That I experienced this in my life. A lot of people that have this anomalous contact, we find ourselves with kind of expressing the gifts that we usually think of as belonging to the beings themselves. And I think that there's something like a cosmic contagion that's passed along through this experience.
Can I say something about that?
Sure, Dolly, sure.
Okay. You are physical mind in your consciousness. You have consciousness on board. That's who you really are, is your consciousness. And if you're not developed enough to hear your consciousness, outright hear it, your physical mind can be spoken to by them. And this is exactly what they did. They download you with information while they're there. In other words, they're speaking to your consciousness, not your physical mind, because your physical mind can't hear it. Okay. And then as you go along from that, you start experiencing it, because your consciousness is not going to let you forget it. In other words, it's going to come at you in your dreams. It's going to come at you in your experiences. It's going to give you serendipitous moments.
Well, synchronicities. That was
absolutely.
That's
your
how they
will
contacted me.
Tell you what it is. And what it is basically is that I hope you know that your abilities are innate. In other words, you have a pineal gland in your mind, your brain, and it operates. And whether you're using it properly or not is up to you. Okay.
Sure.
And how you treat yourself and all of that.
Well,
you have all the abilities that ET has, all of them.
Oh, I know. We're born with those. We are born
So,
with those. It's like they were engaged is what happened.
So what happened is you asked for contact and you bloody got it. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And while they
it's
were
unequivocal.
Here, they were trying to talk to you. They were telling you all kinds of stuff, but you couldn't hear it yet. And now you're living through it, and it's going to keep coming at you until you get it, until you work it out. And that's what your thirst and your hunger for all of this is. That's the seed they plant. They want you to know the truth, and now you're going for it. See what I'm saying?
So, Earl, when you say the Valet Davis effect, Can you be more specific? Do you mean like experiencing
Yeah,
paranormal?
sure. Well,
Telepathic?
the idea that Kenneth Rain, I believe, was the first guy who he was a psychologist that was doing he was doing a research project looking into near death experiences, and somebody gave him a book about alien abduction. I forget whose it was, whether it was Turner or Bud Hopkins or whose book it was. But anyway, they said, I think you would find like that there are commonalities between these experiencers of alien abduction and visitation and those that have had out of body experiences and near death experiences. And he kind of connected the dots and saw this. And a lot of these people, after they have this extraordinary experience, it will engage. It'll do the same thing as Dolly was saying. The pineal gland is engaged, and people begin to have synchronicities, telepathic moments. Intuition is kicked up through the rafters. I mean, I was able to connect the dots. I was suddenly like the best field investigator around, because I would see every little marker and I would connect my cases. It was not like this case and this random case, and no, you would be able to collate and see, and it just opened up my understanding.
You know how
and experiencers become spiritual. We become spiritual too.
I've noticed that pattern for sure. Yeah.
Right. I used to tell a friend that she was trying to be link up to her psychic abilities, and she just was having a hard time understanding how this works. And I said, look, when you learn to ride a bike, you tell your parents, I want to ride a bike, right? And they give you a tricycle and it's easy to ride. And then you graduate and you go to a two-wheeler. Well, sometimes they put training wheels on the thing so you can get your balance. And then they take them off and you ride on it. This is the same channel of events in another way. You wanted to know about ETs. You grew up knowing that something was going on, that space was more than what everybody realized. You were hungering for it already because you were already in contact. Trust me, you were. And then you
we have watchers. That's what I found.
Yeah.
And
more
people,
than that.
yeah, people, consider guardian angels and this and that. But I mean, there are extraordinary experiences. I mean, when I was 3 years old, I was thrown out of the car window in a car accident. We went off a cliff in Utah. And I guess that's my first memory is my mom drove off a cliff. And my dad is next to me and he's going, Jesus is going to protect us. Jesus will protect us. And the next, I remember the door opening up and I go out. And the next memory is I see the station wagon with the wheels spinning around upside down,
Yeah.
Mom was okay, except she broke her back. But she, it was healable. Dad had just like a contusion on his head. And for me, there was a rock like a foot away from my head, but I didn't have a scratch. I didn't have a scratch,
Amazing.
And I have like a whole lineage of similar things. And I feel like I've been watched over all of my life. I mean, when I was singing and waving to the space people at, that young age, there was a reason for that. I mean, I believe that was.
With them. That's right.
Well, at some point, I do want to get into some of the cases you investigated, but I also know you had another sighting. But I do want to pop up this question before I lose it. Because it was asked at 9:30 by Tools. Is MUFON interested in personal UFO experiences from 60 years ago?
Absolutely. I mean, I love historical cases. That's like meat and potatoes. Yeah. Oh, I have one case where a guy and his friend were playing toboggan with a cardboard box down Ice Plant in Echo Park in Los Angeles. And they were young enough to where they saw this silver missile shaped UFO that was hovering like 7 feet off the ground. And they kept playing toboggan, but they waved at the UFO. They kept waving, the space people. And then this thing, it went to like a 90-degree angle and shot off. And this happened in 1952, I believe, is when that this guy had his experience. He was an older gentleman kind of wanting to tell his story. Well, it wasn't a month later. I had 2 guys in San Diego that are closer to my age that were motorcycle guys. they were kind of doing motocross up this hill. They got up to the top of the hill, and what they see was this silver-shaped missile thing that was defying gravity. It was like 7 feet off the ground. I mean, this just happened recently, and it again, the same thing. It went up to 90-degree angle and shot off into the cosmos, apparently. Now, if I didn't have that other case that was from over 60 years ago, I wouldn't have had anything to compare it to. But it was essentially the same thing.
What you told me, I know for a fact both of those were real sightings, just by the fact that it went up on a 90-degree angle.
Oh, yeah, that's what they always do.
And that's how they power up to go. They're changing polarity and they shoot out from it. So,
Preston, you might like this, or you might like it too, Dolly. I mean, I don't know if either of you guys are like big music fans, but I love the band Yes. They're progressive rock.
I love them. Yes.
Okay, you'll like this. I because of synchronicity or God or my aliens, I'm not sure why, but for some reason, I got to become very close friends with Chris Squire, their bass player.
You're kidding.
Chris was a dear friend. In fact, he's one of the reasons why I decided to become a field investigator. Because in 1977, he had a sighting. He was out. They were on the Going for the One tour in England. And he told me this story. It was like 3:00 in the morning, and Chris would like to drink wine and talk. So, and I was his friend, so that's what we do. And he was in town he was recording an album, a side project away from Yes. And, but he started telling me this story. And he had his driver pull over. It's kind of the middle of nowhere. And he was literally peeing on a rock when he felt stared at. He looked up and he saw a flying saucer, and he said it had these garish, I can't do Chris's voice, these garish lights going around the bottom of it. They were purple, and it looked like a carnival ride. It was just absurd. It was absurd. And he said that this thing, it hung there watching him, and he zipped up. He zipped up, and he said that it went to an angle. Right. And shot off into space.
Wow. Yeah. That's exactly real. You want to hear a funny story?
He said, "Who do you suppose that was?" And I said, "Well, maybe it was us from the future, maybe because musicologist, or maybe there's some ETs that are interested in music. I mean, John Lennon had a similar sighting with Big Bang.
Musicians. Moody Blues,
Moody Blues,
yes, all of them.
Jimi Hendrix."
Yes, right? I met Jimi Hendrix on board.
Did you?
Yes, wow. I did. I was little.
He was a contactee.
Yes,
I know a friend of his, Robert Hieronymus. He was a close friend with Jimmy, and he said Jimmy was absolutely a contactee. Aliens saved his life at one point. In fact,
yes.
New York. How about that guy?
I met him when I was about 7 years old.
Really?
He was on board. And I was going to quarters, on board. And I walked by him. He was sitting in the middle of some people, And he had a guitar, and he was playing a cappella, And I was shocked. I'd never seen anybody do that in real life. And I just followed toward him, and I'm standing there with my mouth hanging open going, and he said, "Come here." And
I never met Jimmy. But I did know Chris.
He taught me chord. He taught me my first 2 chords, a C and a G. And he taught me how to strum. And he said, keep playing. And I did. I play the guitar because of him. I also listen to music when I'm flying on board. I'm not joking. And Yes is one of my favorite groups to listen to.
Yeah. I love Yes.
When I was interviewing Dahlia, I started asking him, I don't suppose you've ever seen any famous people, because she wasn't going to offer that information. Her story is very extensive. I'll have to give you Dolly's book. Because,
I know a few famous experiencers, but I can't say who. But that's
okay.
I mean, you know about the Santa Monica Mountains.
I know a bunch. Trust me, and I'm not allowed to talk about it. That's right.
I can't either. I can't either.
Yeah.
It's a shame.
Preston does too. Yes.
I know some they're mega famous. I mean, oh God, don't tell me this.
Chris, I mean, and sadly we lost him about, it's 8 years ago now. It was 8 years ago. And but Scott, the way I knew Chris was his friend Scotland Taylor was a dear close friend of mine, and just from Yes fandom, right? I used to write a
Yeah.
blog. I was administrator from YesFans.com,
Wow.
but apparently Chris used to secretly read my blogs, and so when he started seeing Scotty, Scotty met him in Hawaii. And I was there too. I mean, I was 2003, and there was this big show in Honolulu. It was Yes with a full orchestra, and Rick Wakeman was playing with them too. And it was the only time that Rick played with Yes, and they had an orchestra. Other times it would be the orchestra would take place of the keyboards, or you get Rick Wakeman, right? So I had to go to Hawaii to see this show, and Scotty hooked up with him. She got backstage, and he fell madly in love with Scotty, and they got married. They had a little girl, Xylin, who I still kind of keep in touch with Scotty and Xy. But Chris, it changed his life when he had his experience, his sighting. And the last thing that I spoke with him a week before he passed away. Scott, I mean, he had leukemia, is what he died from. And Scotty held the phone up. She had to hold the phone up to his ear. He was just really, really sad. But I got to tell Chris, I said, Chris, I've become a MUFON field investigator. I'm going to figure out who is flying that flying saucer. And he was happy. She said, Earl, he's smiling. He's smiling.
That's amazing.
I miss the man. I wish he was here. I wish my mom was here. I mean, there's like this whole panoply of people that I wish so badly that
Can you OBE?
but they're gone.
Have you learned to OBE, out of body?
Astral projection.
I've had an out of body. I've had a near death experience actually when I was in a hospital, 21 years old, and I was floating. It was the hospital where I was born, St. John's in Santa Monica. And
Wow.
I was floating like down the hallway, and I could hear I could see light, and I could hear a klaxon alarm in my head that was, you're not supposed to do this. You're not supposed to do this. And I remember crawling back into my body and coming to, but that's, other than that, I've had dream states where I think that I've probably astral traveled and stuff, but I can't do that. I was very good at meditating. I could feel the cord going up and all that stuff, but yeah, but I have that one.
You accomplish OBE, you can talk to your mom. You can talk to. You can
I have people that have, that say out of me.
I'm going to pop up a question because
Sure.
I've always say that, we want to interact with the chat, and people have some really interesting questions. And I'm sure Dolly can answer this. The question is from Tools, and I'm interested in if any of your cases reflect this, because none of mine really do. But Tools is asking, has your research shown any indication that ETs have a sense of smell? And I can't say I have ever had any
Maybe
indication.
if they use a human avatar,
No,
then they would
smell.
have the human senses.
Preston knows this. I've talked about this extensively with him. One of the way the tall grays greet each other is they rub foreheads and they huff each other. They smell each other. They smell pheromones really well. And they're almost like dogs. I'm not joking. I'm a hybrid, and I have an unbelievable sense of smell. And Mama, my ET contact, told me I've inherited that. I can smell anything with my nose.
I have an unbelievable sense of smell too.
Wow.
Yeah, and they do smell.
I haven't. I don't have any personal cases where that was evident, but that doesn't mean that they're. I believe you. Yeah, I mean, I do believe you. I mean, I think that they run the gamut, and I think that that our visitors can kind of appear how they want and where they want, and I mean, we had a recent case where a couple of women stopped their car to look at the 4-foot tall jackrabbits in the road, and 2 hours later they came to, and they were not jackrabbits. So,
where was that?
I think this happened. No, it was an ERT case. It wasn't my case. It was one of my ERT guys. I've got 3 ERT people or myself here.
That wasn't on a desert highway in Utah, was it?
You know, it might have been the same case. Yeah, that might be the same one, Preston. I think
Oh.
that might be the same case. I have to look at the details. Again, it wasn't mine, but I love the jackrabbit. So, I mean, Dr. George Medich is our he runs the Experiencer resource
All right.
team. And I remember when the case came in, he was shaking his head and kind of going, jackrabbits. Yeah.
Susan,
But
if
nothing
you're
surprises me. Hmm?
Yeah, if Susan is here tonight, I think that's her case. I am not sure.
Really? Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's in
I
my
mean,
latest book.
what I love, for me, every wonderful case and the best cases, I think that they have intentional absurdity in them. And it's almost like a signature line. It's almost
Yeah.
like an eye wink, you can have this perfectly scientific thing that's going on. And then it all goes to Jacques Vallée land,
I think they have a sense
So-
of humor. I really do.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
first visual
They do
sighting
have a
was
sense of humor.
an umbrella. I was laying in the front yard and I saw this giant umbrella coming down. I was 5.
I've heard of that one.
And I was like, what the hell? I thought it was Mary Poppins umbrella because I just seen Mary Poppins. So that was in my head.
Hmm.
And I'm looking for the handle and the parrot, and there was none. And the very first thing I thought before I was on board was, well, it
Hmm.
doesn't have a handle. That doesn't mean it's an umbrella. And then I was on board. And it freaked me out for 5 minutes. I was like,
That reminds me of a
vibe. Yeah.
early case from the 50s. Who was it that saw a UFO that looked like an umbrella? Oh, I know, and it's making me nuts. Well, I'll tell you in a second.
Okay.
Well, you sent
Because
me
there's a
some,
very famous ufologist, is one of the classic people.
you sent me
husband
some
and wife.
pictures, Earl. So maybe we could go through some of the
Oh, sure, yeah.
some of those because.
Yeah.
Well, here, let me see.
Well, that's the Sagittarius arm of our own galaxy right there. Beautiful picture.
I think I pulled that one off your website, actually. Sorry.
Oh, wow. I didn't even send you that one. That was
No,
a
you
case.
didn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, this one is a cool one, and it is an abduction case. This was a case, it was actually MUFON Case of the Year a couple of years ago, and I spoke about it at the symposium. But the main witnesses were a clinical psychologist and her son, and she was driving him home from some event when they saw this V-shaped craft hanging over a school. They love to hang over schools, you guys. That's where I had my sighting, was hanging over a grammar school. And this was the same thing. It was hanging over a grammar school. And it's like, what's that, Mom? Adult son, by the way. He was like 18, 19 years old. So not a child. And the closer they get to it, it starts turning on its side, and the little blue and white lights that you see, that's her illustration. They started flashing, and they started experiencing the Oz effect, where time became weird. External sounds were not there. And we're not sure if it was 5 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes. It was very weird. But they, of course, this thing, it turns back the way that they saw it originally, where the lights were facing down towards the ground. Ah, yeah, you got the other picture too. I forgot whether I sent you that. And that's the mom's illustration with them in the little car there. So this thing, it spun around and it was almost like rooftop level. And she said that it was almost like looking at the nacelles of the Starship Enterprise when it was leaving, because they had those two things in the back.
And for those who can't see this is a V-shaped craft with lights along each arm, very low level.
What time of day was it?
It was in the early evening, and it had in the very front of it, it had what looked like a cloud, and that's that little what you see up front. That's kind of a fuzzy area.
Yeah.
It looked like it had a little cloud in the front. You couldn't see that it came to a point or
Yeah.
not. And but they didn't say a single word to each other. It was almost like they came to this agreement: we're not going to talk about this, which we know is a part of this quite often. And Mom drives home, not talking about it. They saw a spaceship over the school, not going to say a word. And they drove into the driveway, and then the son says, "Mom, what was that?" And she said, "Well, I think you know as well as I know. We just saw a UFO." Um, Now, that's a pretty good story right there, but that's not where it ends. The mom started having missing time experiences. The father in this situation is a medical doctor. The mother, a clinical psychologist. They actually do like mental health work with people out there. So I can't say who the people are. I can't give you
Right.
any
It's okay.
personal information, and I do that anyway. I kind of adhere to HIPAA law.
Unnecessary. Yeah.
Um, but anyway, she starts finding her. The husband wouldn't be able to move, but he would see the beings, and they were the small grays. They would take the wife up to a ship, and there was the mantis that was highly telepathic, and I'm just going to read the case file for you on that. I think that this one was actually mentioned during the congressional hearings, although I can't tell you that for sure, but it's the only case I know of that happened between Japan and Hawaii. But hold on one second. Let me find the case file here for you. Here we go. This I again will redact the pilot's name, but this was a commercial pilot. Said, my initial UFO sighting was on February 12th, 2005, flying at 39,000 feet elevation back to Honolulu, Hawaii, 1421 Zulu, and he's got the coordinates here. There were three of us, myself, the co-pilot, and our flight engineer. I'm retiring next year. I've noticed the airline I currently work for seems to be backing off from warning us not to report UAP sightings since the new FAA rules have loosened. So I decided to put in a MUFON report. It was February 12th, 2005. I was piloting a DC-10, Flight 58 for Japan Air Charter, subsidiary of JAL. We were flying out of Fukuoka, Japan, back to Honolulu. I'd flown this route multiple times. I had never seen anything that I couldn't explain before this happened. I didn't believe that UFOs were a real thing. At 1421 Zulu in the early morning, just past the international date line, you could just see a little fingernail of blue at the horizon line, but everything else was pitch black. We were cruising along when next thing you know, something catches my eye right around 10 o'clock off the nose of the aircraft, 30 degrees azimuth. I saw something. At first, just a flash of light reflected off of something. But then I saw it, and I pointed it out to my crew members, and I said, what the hell is that? My co-pilot said, what? And I pointed directly at what I saw. I said, that. Sure enough, there were three huge, and I mean huge discs that had come up into the upper atmosphere, glinting the sun off of their surfaces, far above the horizon line. I mean, they were up so far that they were technically still in space. They hadn't really entered our atmosphere yet. Now, when you're up at 39,000 feet, you can see stuff. For instance, when the space shuttle did their tether experiment, we could see that happening from up there. Well, these objects were very, very large because they had to have been at least 100 miles away from us. So I would estimate that each silver disc must have been a good couple hundred feet across, and that's downsizing, if anything. No surface features that you could see, no bubble on top. Just three metallic discs glinting the sun back at us. They were in a tight equilateral triangular formation. There weren't any lights on them that I could see, just their mirrored surfaces unwavering like chrome, reflecting back the light from a high altitude, basically. We watched them, and as they came in, they stopped. And you could kind of see them reorient themselves so they were the exact same distance from each other. And then they just sat there for around 10 seconds like that, hovering in a tight triangular pattern. When the UFOs took off, they didn't have to accelerate to speed. They just took off instantaneously at an incredible speed, and they shot off down past the horizon line. It was bizarre. You know, we're used to accelerating up to speed, but these objects left suddenly, all at once. If I hadn't been looking right at them, I would have thought that they had blinked out of existence and disappeared. But nope, you could see them shoot off together at unimaginable speed. Now, flight crews come and go. I don't really keep in touch with past crews I've worked with, but the three of us kind of bonded over having seen this. We stay in touch as the three of us witness something that they say does not exist. but we saw this with our own eyes, and it changed the way that I look at the stars at night. In fact, it changed the way that I see everything.
Wow.
Just a
That is
good UFO sighting. No abductions, but
I love the pilot
chased
sightings.
guys.
They're trained observers, and they're up
Yes.
there
Right.
all the time. And there's so many more that, we don't hear about the vast majority of it. Let's face it.
Oh,
Most
no.
people don't report them.
Yeah. Well, they're not. The point is with pilots is they're not passive observers. They're interactive observers. They have to be. They're flying, and anything coming at them is dangerous, and they know
Dangerous.
it. So they're constantly scanning the skies. It is their job, and as pilots, so you have to listen to
Very,
them.
very good guy, and I guess that he's joined this group of pilots now that's proposing this to Congress that they need to be honest with the public, because it's a risk. That it's a risk to commercial jets and commercial flight, and that they need to acknowledge that this is a thing and deal with it. But anyway, I guess I just threw that at you because it was a recent case and I really loved it. So
I liked it. Well, I'm going to pop up a question here from Neural Channels, who is asking, have you investigated any tall white cases?
yes, yeah, those are the guys I wanted to meet. I had a guy who professional photographer out in Badlands somewhere. I won't tell you where. And he was out alone, and he on top of a pinnacle of rock, like 150 feet up in the air and nowhere to go. And he saw what looked like a meteor coming towards him. And he said that this was headed straight for him, and he thought he was going to die. And he fell on his, on his butt. But then suddenly he was there was just bright light all around him. So he pulls his hands away from his eyes, and he said that these three tall humans with blonde hair, blue eyes, perfect features, wearing, I believe they were like the blue jumpsuits, appeared like Star Trek next to him. And there was no place for him to go. I mean, it was this little tiny, I guess what they call a hoodoo, but a very tall one, Southwest kind of rock butte. He said that he had never felt such love in his life, that with the tall woman was talking to there was like a child or like an adolescent. So it seemed like it was the father and the mom and an adolescent. And she was telling him that this has been my charge all of his life. I've known him since he was a little baby. And, but this guy he said that he felt greatly depressed because he's hoping that he will meet with them again. He said that it was the greatest love he ever felt in his life.
I've heard that exact thing, which brings up this question, actually. Do ETs have emotional attachments? Jamie D is asking. Friendships like humans.
Yes.
Depends on the ET. Yeah. I mean, the little gray guys are pretty robotic. I mean, some people think
they're
they are
AI.
biorobots. Yeah.
They're
Seem
biological
like-
AI. I was wondering if you figured that out yet. That they're
No, I
really
did.
smart.
They didn't talk
They're
to me, and
biological AI.
there's nothing there.
Yeah.
I figured the tall guy was the one that was cogent. And
That's right.
For whatever reason, he wasn't. But
All right.
But
Here's a personal question, Earl, from Janice.
Is that a photo of my mom in the background? Yeah. So, there went E.T. I know, it's just a little model of it.
Yeah, I used to have a photo of my
model
mom.
of an E.T. But yeah, that's my mom right there. That's Betty Grace Anderson was her name.
It's beautiful.
And that's why I'm into all this stuff,
Very cool.
That's very nice.
Wow. Okay. Well, you gave us another photo. We're running out of time. We've got like 10, 15 minutes left. And I do want to hear about your schoolyard encounter, but here's another photo that you sent us, which I am curious about because it's a really, not
you
a
want
photo,
the everything
it's
bagel tonight. I love this case.
drawing. Yeah.
Again, what I've seen from case to case to case, and this repeats from case to case. It'll be a family. They're outside, say, a barbecue or whatever. Somebody sees a distant light in the distance, and the mom pointed. In this case, the mom pointed to this star that was very, very bright over the mountain and said, "What's that?" just like the pilot. What's that? Next thing you know, this thing was right on top of her best friend. It was a whole family. It was a family barbecue. The main witness was 10 years old then. Now she's in her 30s, like mid 30s. She's trying to get her mom's attention. She's scared. She's tugging on her mom's pants at her mom, and her mom's best friend are standing there like statues. So this little girl, she ran into the house, which was now flooded with light. She found her little nephew. She put her arms around her nephew because he was scared. And the next thing you know, they both wake up, and it's 8 o'clock in the morning. They're tucked into their beds. The uncle and his best friend will not talk about it. The mother will. Spoken with the mom, spoken with her friend, spoken with the daughter. And that's the daughter's illustration. She's an artist. And I use a lot of art therapy with my experiencer cases because there's catharsis in expression.
Is this a porthole then that we're looking at with people?
We're looking at a window all the way around with beings in there, and the bottom of the craft almost looked biological. You can see where it almost looks like roots or something. And she said, yeah, that's the way it was. I can't understand it. It looks like it grew that way. There you go.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah. They can open windows up on any viewporting on any craft at all.
Yeah.
All craft are
It's
intelligent.
not glass. That's
biological.
for sure.
No. For viewport. Have you ever seen a leaf that when you touch it or put water on it, it turns translucent? It goes from green to see-through. Almost the same thing. The leaf is primitive. That's way advanced. But it's the same idea.
It's like I heard the Roswell crash site, the debris field, the pieces were trying to reassemble into the original shape, like a living thing.
Yes.
And they were blowing, like there was no breeze, but it looked like it was all in a breeze. I know the Marcel family real well.
Yeah, so that was Susan's case. Susan, yeah. With the jackrabbit.
That is your case. You're the one with the jackrabbits. We love your case. I wanted that for myself, but I gave that to my field investigator.
Yeah.
We love the tall jackrabbits. It was just such a wonderful, wonderful case and proverbial, I don't know if, I believe that they'll use screen memories and screen images so that they don't scare us.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
That is very synchronistic. Out of all the people in the
Very much
world,
so.
you're listening to us tonight.
They'll take that of your own mind, what you're least afraid of, and show it to you. That's right.
And I would not say your name there, Susan, but you did. So anyhow.
Yeah, well, she's courageously stepped forward, which is always a big, huge step.
And that's hard
forward.
to do. I kept it to myself. After I'd had my experience, the only people I would, the people I told at first acted like I was nuts or they wanted to fire me for MUFON or something. So I would tell my new field investigators, because I felt like I owed them that little heads up caveat that, if you poke at the phenomenon, it's interactive. Don't be surprised if it pokes back. They're not here to do air shows,
Right.
So
you said you were also driving by a school once, and
yeah, this was after my experience. This happened about 4 or 5 years ago. It happened out here in Winnetka, California. I was driving to work, so it was a daytime sighting. No preamble to it. I wasn't asking to see ETs again. I was just, but it felt like a teachable moment. I saw a V-shaped craft. Not a beautiful craft. I always wanted to see like something streamlined and, a starship, out of Arthur Clarke, right? That's what I grew up reading. But it was real boxy looking. It looked old and rusted. And when I first saw it, it was about the size of like a large UPS truck or maybe a fighter plane, size, maybe a little larger. So I was about 300 feet away from it, and I'm trying to figure out how somebody did this hoax because it didn't look like any UFO I'd ever heard of. And I'm looking for tethers. Maybe somebody hung something, the students are trying to freak their teacher out or something. No, there's nothing that you could tether this up with. It was just massive tonnage. The closer you got to it, you could see it was metallic and heavy and massive tonnage that was just defying gravity somehow. So now I'm a trained observer. I'm a STAR team member. I know what I'm supposed to do, who I'm supposed to call, how I could protect myself from radiation, etc. Didn't do anything that I have ever been taught to do. The closer I got to this thing, the less in control of myself I was. About 100 feet away from this thing, I am thinking, I am going to be late to work. I got to go. I have to go to work. I'm going to be late. And I didn't like that job. I was always looking for excuses, not going to that case. So, but sorry, old client, but I didn't like it. Anyway, sorry, just kidding. But anyway, about long story short, I couldn't hear the sounds outside of my car. Time got very weird. Again, I felt like I was in a hypnagogic state, and I'm driving a vehicle, you guys. I'm driving like 45 miles an hour down Winnetka Boulevard here, where I live currently. So I passed right by it, but when I got right next to it, it changes in perspective. It kind of foreshortened a little bit. And the next thing I know, it's the size of a football field and it's a mile away. But I didn't care. Did I take any photos? No. Did I take video? No. It was like,
it's weird how
though I know it was just, and I just drove right past that miracle. I just kept on going. And I was about a mile from the 118 freeway here when I came to my senses, and I stopped my car. I got out, and of course there's nothing there anymore. And I'm like palming, and what did I do? I mean, I wanted to fire myself from MUFON. I didn't even bother to put in a report. But you know what? It was a teachable moment. It just showed me that that they're in control, that you can be trained to do what you've been trained to do. But if you're within their realm of influence, you're not going to do something that they don't want you to do. It kind of explains why you don't see a whole lot of really close-up pictures. They're always distant and fuzzy. I didn't even get a distant, fuzzy picture of it. It was as though I was I can't even explain it to this day. It's very, very, very strange. And I was so embarrassed by it. I mean, I think I told my state director at the time, maybe later, but I just felt like an idiot. But now I understand. I mean, it was to teach me something. It was not a hot rod. They showed themselves, but they didn't show me what I wanted to see. They showed me this boxy looking thing. Yeah.
Wow. Well, we just have like 3 or 4 minutes left of the show, so I want to give you a chance. We do have a couple more questions, but I'm not sure we really have time. Let's just try.
We don't. We're running the gamut right now.
Let's try one real fast. Is there a reason? This is Brad Peanut. Is there any reason why we may constantly see craft but never meet beings that we remember? That's hard.
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Is there any reason we may constantly see crafts but never meet beings?
Maybe it's not time to meet them yet, or maybe you have met them and you don't remember,
that we remember anyway.
There are reasons. There are huge reasons right now.
I wish we could go more into that, but we are now pushing to 2 minutes. So do you have any upcoming things or anything you want to?
Yeah, well, I'm going to be speaking at the MUFON symposium in Ohio in about 8 days from now. On Saturday and Sunday, I'm leading both experiencer workshops. If you come in, I'll give a short presentation each day, but it's mostly so that you guys can no phones or video or anything like that will be allowed, because we believe that we respect your anonymity is paramount to us. If somebody wants to go like Susan just did and talked about her jackrabbits, I mean, that's okay. And I will certainly go and back your case and say, yes, it's absolutely true. But so if you live in the Ohio area, be sure to go to the MUFON symposium. We have some wonderful speakers. If anything that I've been telling you sounds familiar to you, just go to MUFON.com. It'll say report an entity or report a UFO. And somebody like myself or somebody like me will get a hold of you and will take you seriously. And we would love to hear about your sighting or your meeting that you had.
Thank you. That's
Very cool.
awesome.
Thank you, Dolly, and thank you, Preston.
You're welcome.
Both of
You're
you guys for
welcome.
having me.
Of course.
We have to have you again. There's lots more to unpack with you. Definitely
you.
say
Sure.
that. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining the Lightgate tonight. If you didn't get a question answered, the live feed will still be up and you will be answered one way or the other from either one of us, me, Preston, or Earl. The Lightgate has come to you tonight from the United Public Radio Network at 107.3 FM in New Orleans and the United Paranormal Radio Network at 105.3. We thank you very much for coming to see us. We're going to miss you. See you next week. Bye.
Thanks, Earl.
Bless you guys. Thank you.